Hey guys, what's up? It's Alec Torelli. I'm back creating content. In this video, my main event journey, thoughts on the structural changes about the main event, thoughts on the final table, the players, the commentary, the game, how it played out, Maahs tanking, and much more coming up on this episode.
Ask Alec.
Gosh, it feels great to be back, guys. Thank you for your support. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm putting out a lot more content this week about the most interesting hands from the WSOP Main Event final table. Be sure to subscribe because that's coming right up. So first off, I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for your understanding in me taking a break, creating content, and really focusing all my energy on playing and doing my best in the main event. I read all my comments. I heard a lot of you guys come up to me and talk to me in Vegas as well. That means a lot to me. I love meeting and interacting with you guys. I just want to say thank you again for your support. It really does mean the world to me. As for my main event journey, I started off with an immense run in the beginning. I ended up going from 60 to 150K in 2 levels and played some really interesting hands, sort of just chipped away. It seems like I never was all in, never like doubled up or anything. Played some interesting pots like this one. Check it out. He opens in mid position. He has like 45, 50K, and I'm in the cutoff with Queen Jack offsuit. I decided to 3-bet here. I had 3-bet him once before, and it's just a really tough spot for him. He's kind of had this kind of awkward stack. It sucks for him to call out of position against me. And I also have a hand that plays decent post flop. I could hit a pair and win at showdown. It's not like I have complete trash. It's also one of those hands that's almost too strong to fold, but definitely not strong enough to call. And so it plays a lot better as a 3-bet. I also opt for a big size here to really put a lot of pressure on him pre-flop, just set up the hand for me to have a lot of leverage post-flop. Flop comes King 6-4 rainbow, and I have Queen Jack offsuit, which blocks 2 combinations of King Queen and King Jack suited. So it's a pretty good flop for me. I could rep some King Queens as well. And Ace King, obviously it's a flop that favors my range, and I'm hoping that he check folds some mid pairs or ace highs if I bet multiple streets. He checks, I bet 2,300, about a third of the pot, and he check calls. Turn comes a jack, which is a great card for me, because now I beat all of his ace highs, I beat all of his mid pairs, 6x type hands, 7s through 10s. Great card for me. I think I'm very likely to have the best hand. He checks, and now I opt to check behind. I thought about going for value again on this turn, just trying to get value from like a mid pair type of hand, but I just think it's more likely that he calls with that hand on the river. There's also a chance that if I check the turn, he turns some ace high hands into bluffs, or some 6x into a bluff or something like that. He's been bluffing in spots that don't really make sense, so I wanted to take advantage of that rather than try and get value by betting. So check on the turn, the river comes a 3. He checks pretty quick, and at this point I'm sure he has a bluff catcher type hand. If he had a king, I'm very confident he would bet here, just because of how he was, his image, and the way he'd been playing. So now I opt for a 3rd pot bet. I bet about 3,600, which is a really tough bet for him. It really looks like he has some ace high or some mid pair type of hands, and this bet puts his range in a very tough spot. It also allows me to bluff and value bet some more hands, so it's just a really tough bet for him. He hims and ahs for a bit, ends up calling, Queen Jack's the winner, and it's hands like that that I've been playing, grinding, and sort of optimizing to build up my stack to where it is. So that was an example of some of the hands I played. I just kind of grinded my way up to winning quite a few chips. I did document every single hand I played on my phone. I wrote down literally every spot I played during the main event, and I will be releasing a lot of the key hands, how I got chips, the most interesting things, my tournament insights and strategies in the Conscious Poker membership, which you can get access to for a free trial at the link below. I'm going to be dropping hands over the next couple of weeks that I played during the main event. So if you're interested in learning more about tournament strategy, click the link below, sign up for a free trial, and no risk to you. Check it out. As for the rest of my main event journey, when I went up to 150K in chips, as good as the first couple levels went, the last couple levels went disastrous. I just sort of lost a lot of medium-sized pots, and I ended up going down to 15K at the end of day 1, 20 big blinds going into day 2. I ran it up back to 100K, won a flip with jacks to ace king, lost a flip with jacks to ace king, ended up busting the tournament end of day 2. Did not cash. So that was my main event journey. Ended just quicker than I'd like. Happy with how I played. Glad I gave myself the space and energy to give myself a chance to really focus all my energy on playing. That meant a lot to me, and it was fun. I'll be back again next year. Now, as for the main event, I'd like to talk about some of the changes they made this year, my thoughts on the main event in general. And first off, I'd like to kick it off with the Big Blind Ante. This is new to the World Series of Poker. And for those of you who don't know, the Big Blind Ante is just like what it sounds. The big blind putting in the ante for the rest of the table. So if the blinds are 500, 1K, the big blind will put in an additional 1K as an ante for all the players of the table. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about this, and some people have asked my thoughts about this, but without getting into the strategy changes, which are subtle that you have to make with a big blind ante as a player, I just want to talk about the format of the big blind ante and how amazing I think this is for tournament poker and poker in general. First off, there is absolutely no discrepancy about who has to put money in the pot. And this creates a situation where it prevents a lot of, confusion and animosity amongst the players, where people are doubting who had to put the money in or who forgot to ante or whatever, because a lot of times the pot is one ante short, someone forgets, the dealer doesn't really know, the players argue. And not only is this like a bad environment for the players, it also wastes an immense amount of time. Anteing in general wastes an immense amount of time because people are on their phones, people forget to ante, and then you have to like literally go around the table and collect an ante from every single player. And it's just a huge waste of time. I actually estimate that the big blind ante probably saves something like 30 minutes a day, which is a lot of additional hands that you get to play, and that favors you. You want to play more hands in the day because there's less variance, you get to play more poker, it's a lot more fun, less of your time is spent dealing with ante sort of antics, and more time is spent playing poker. It's overall an amazing thing. Not a single person I talk to who's played in both formats prefers the old way. So I'm really confident the big blind ante is a great adjustment to poker. I personally love it. I feel like I share the sentiment of the players as well. Congrats to the World Series for making an amazing adjustment with that. Second adjustment they made that I noticed was the WSOP Main now starts with an ante. The blinds start at 100, I believe, with an ante. And this is amazing because before, the first couple levels, half of the first day was played with no ante. And the first day is already rather insignificant in the main event anyway. You're just kind of trying to survive. It's the day of survival. And when you add that up to the fact that there's no ante in the first couple levels, it's quite slow and quite boring. The pots are very insignificant and the action is a lot less. When you add an ante, people start competing for pots, right? They have more incentive to play pots. There's more dead money. The ranges are wider. People are playing more aggressive. It's a lot more fun. It's a better experience. And better experiences are better for poker in general. I'm all for that. So I love this adjustment as well, adding an ante from the beginning. Great job. The next adjustment they made is they added an additional 10K chips to the starting stack. So instead of starting with 50K, we start with 60K, which of course is just better. You're deeper, there's more room to play. That's just better for everyone in general. They also have the blinds go up slower. So you're starting with 100, 200 blinds, then you go 200, 300, 200, 400, 250, 500, 300, 600. So at the end of day one, you end with 300, 600 blinds. The blinds very slowly go up. So there's a ton of room for play. No forced action at all. But then you add that with the big blind ante and the fact that there's an ante in the first level. And it's this perfect marriage of action while still having a lot of time to play more poker. It's an overall incredible experience. There's not a single adjustment I disagree with. They were all amazing and they did a very, very good job. The next thing I'd like to talk about is late registration, which is a little bit more controversial. As you probably are aware, you're allowed to buy into the WSOP main event on day 2, and all the tournaments in general, from my understanding at least, have a later registration window than they did in the past. Now, this is creating a situation where a lot of people are taking to Twitter and sharing their thoughts. First off, I'd like to highlight Matusow, who points out an extreme situation where a player had a prop bet and actually registered for a 1K PLO event, didn't play a single hand, and cashed in the tournament. Now, that to me seems a little bit unfair, maybe a little bit against the spirit of the game. I think that, people would say that that's not what we intend with late registration, when the merits of late registration are to build the prize pool and allow people to play multiple tournaments, which I totally understand. If someone's playing in one tournament and they bust out, they want to be able to hop into another one. And late registration extends the window to which people can do that, so it's more flexible for the players that are there. They can play more events, and it builds bigger prize pools. That makes sense to me. But going this far where someone could literally not play a hand and cash feels against the spirit of the game, and I think something might need to be done to make sure that the late registration window isn't such that people can do that, because that would just ruin the tournament if people are doing that. Kenny Hallert makes a great point, former WSOP final tableist. He actually ran some simulations and put out a very extensive document about his findings, which I'll link at the description below as well, and figured out that from an ICM standpoint, good players can have a 16% edge by taking advantage of the max late registration. Now, he believes that's too much. Something like 5% would be more fair. And this punishes, he says, the recreational players who show up on time because they want to have an experience, which I believe is true. The pros are the ones that are much more likely to register late, either because they're in another event or because they simply want to just gain their ROI. And although Kenny feels like this is too big of a window, says reducing the situation to find a happy medium, but it's unclear about exactly where that line should be drawn. I'd love to hear your thoughts in a comment below. I'm not like super sure either about where this line should be drawn. It feels like somewhere not to the point where people can just register and cash, but also having a late registration makes a lot of sense. Propose a solution or just let me know what you think. That said, one more thing about the late registration. If you do have a 16% ROI, should you just show up on day 2 and not play day 1 of the main, or should you play day 1? Well, that depends on a couple things. First of all, I think 16% ROI, if that is actually true for the main event, is not like huge. If you're a great player, a really good pro, I believe your ROI in the main, some people say it could be 100%, maybe even 200%. People are super ambitious, but it definitely is going to be higher than 16. The other thing to consider is that how much do you value your experience? Like how much do you value and enjoy playing the main event, right? That's a highly prized experience for a lot of poker players. And it feels like skipping one day of that when you maybe only play 1 or 2 days doesn't really make much sense. I understand you're going to be a little bit more rested, and maybe that'll help you down the line if you make day 7. But all things considered, I feel like playing more of the tournament just has more of an experience and enjoyment for most players. So I feel like skipping day 1 doesn't really make a lot of sense for me, neither from an ROI standpoint or from a experiential standpoint as well. So I would recommend hopping in day 1, playing the first level, getting reads on the players, and building up a big stack for day 2 that you can then leverage to gain more chips as you progress throughout the tournament. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in a comment below, so be sure to let me know. Now I'd like to talk about the WSOP experience of watching the main event final table, the commentators, and the production. I thought overall they did an amazing job. One thing I'd like to highlight here that I see a lot of people having sort of problems with is the level of commentary that they have at the final table. And one thing you have to remember is they're not commentating towards high stakes pros or very advanced players that already are going to watch poker, that are already involved in poker. They're trying to make this something that's watchable for everyone, something that's as enjoyable for the high stakes pro as it is for a casual recreational player that, maybe plays poker once a week or once a month and watches poker on TV casually and just doesn't understand the game on the level that someone else does that understands combos and GTO and all this stuff. If you focus on that and you're super advanced in your commentary, you're pigeonholing yourself and you're isolating a lot of the players that otherwise would be interested. For example, I'm here in Boise, Idaho, visiting my dad. I watched the main event with my wife, her parents, and my parents, and they don't play poker. They're not like understanding combos and all these sorts of things. So I thought the commentators did a great job of just being able to make it interesting for me to watch as well as a professional, but talking about some of the strategy and also making it interesting for people that don't typically watch poker, which is ultimately what we want. We want to attract people to the game, have people that don't necessarily play as much, be interested in the game, take up poker, watch poker, and be like, this is exciting. I could see this being stimulating. And you have to cater to the widest audience possible in order to do that. So Lon, Norman, class acts, been there for decades. They do a great job. I thought Jamie, as an addition to the commentary crew, was amazing. She's very eloquent. Having a female there is awesome too. But a female aside, she's just great. She's just super knowledgeable about poker, very funny, very well spoken. I thought she was great. I'm sad to see Nick Schulman go. I think we share a sentiment of pretty much all the poker community. He was amazing, had this incredible marriage of intelligent commentary, but also just really well spoken and just easy to understand, easy to follow. And so I miss him. I would love to see him back. But on the breaks, Kara, Scott, Marie Ho, Phil Hellmuth, Class X as well. They were amazing. They did a great job as well. And it's interesting to see the differences of opinion sometimes, the clash of opinions between them. And that's great. That makes for great commentary because everyone has a different way of seeing poker. That's sort of one of the beauties of the game. So I thought everyone did a great job. I thought the production value was awesome. It was a pleasure to watch, and that was great. Lastly, the final table. It was great to watch. I did see the whole thing over 3 days. I am maybe a little biased here, so I'm going to just put that out there in advance. I've been friends with Dario Sammartino for a decade. We met playing on a televised poker game in Europe like 10 years ago, and we've been friends since. I actually went to Naples and hung out with him where he's from.
I'm here with Dario Sammartino, the best player in Italy, possibly the whole world. I'm lucky to be here with such a good guy. Show me around. Dario, dove siamo?
Naples, the best Italy of the best.
And spent some time with him and his family. So he's a great guy, like as great of a player as he is as a person, and vice versa. So it was great to see him go so deep. Heartbreaking to see him get second, but it was an amazing table to watch. I thought, as it got deeper, like Gary Gates, great guy as well. Livingston, of course, San Martino and San, all great players, well-deserving champions. And it was cool to watch, from my point of view, the final table as everyone got deep, and just seeing like, whoever wins, they're going to deserve it. They're as good of players as they are people. It was really interesting to watch their interviews, their perspective on life. And it was just humbling and exciting to watch, to see that these people are as good of people as they are players. And I thought that was really, really cool. It was awesome event, well-deserved. Champion Ensan played very well. He was aggressive at the right times, patient at the right times, and overall played a great tournament. Congrats to him. Hats off. That was awesome. The last thing I'd like to mention is Maahs tanking. I got a lot of people asking me about this, and as a solution, like what to do about these sorts of situations. And this is kind of a tough. If you don't know, Maahs finished 5th, would sometimes tank not super long, but just long enough to be like, what is he thinking about in spots where he didn't really have hands. So there's one hand where he's thinking on the river with queen jack high. So like literally can never call here. And there's some spots where, San Martino made an amazing call with queen high. This really wasn't one of them. I don't think he was ever really considering calling, but he was just kind of thinking. And it took maybe like 30, 40 seconds. And it was like, why is the insta folding here? As opposed to Livingston, who played almost too fast, but incredible to watch because he was so fast at playing. And so it was really an interesting dynamic there to watch. But I don't really have a great solution for this. A lot of people said, oh, well, why don't we implement a shot clock? And as much as I would be in favor of implementing a shot clock in all tournament poker, like a 30-second shot clock, but there's a few logistical issues. It's very hard to implement a shot clock with 8,000 people. So even if you could do it logistically, I don't think it really solves this problem of tanking, because Maahs would only take about 30 seconds. So sometimes it would be folded to him and he'd have like a hand where he clearly wasn't going to open, or he clearly wasn't going to call and open. Like let's say mid-position opens and he's tanking with like Jack 6 offsuit. And it's like, but he only took 30 seconds. So even if there's a 30-second shot clock and he just sits there with 30 seconds with Jack 6 off, it's like that doesn't solve the problem of like this minute tanking. So I don't really know what to do about things like this. I don't really think you can do anything. I also want to think people were a little bit too hard on him. Sure, he tanked in some spots. Maybe he was going to 3-bet with air in these spots. He is at the final table. There's $10 million at stake. I think people should be a little bit more forgiving about these sorts of things. I understand from a player standpoint and watching, especially when people don't have the cards and we can see all the cards, we want them to play all like Livingston so we can just see as many hands as possible and get to the action and kind of see the result. But when you're there at the final table, I think as a strategy, if I were coaching someone, I would say it's better to take too long than not take enough time. So I would say it's better to play like Maahs from an EV standpoint than it is to play like Livingston, who maybe didn't take long enough in certain spots. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it, and I don't really have a great solution for that style of tanking. Now, for longer tanking, like we saw maybe Kasuf do in the past or something like that, that could be something where a shot clock could definitely solve that sort of situation. And in some ways, I feel like a shot clock makes everyone play faster because the pressure of this thing. But then in other ways, I think, don't quote me on this, but I believe that Lon or Norman mentioned that Jack Effel said this. So again, don't quote me, I'm kind of telephone game here, but said that if you do implement a shot clock, one of the concerns was that the players would take the full 30 seconds during every street just because they had it, when if they didn't have a shot clock, they would act faster. So it actually, in a weird way, slowed down the game instead of speed it up. Again, this is a tough topic. There's not a very clear answer. I'd love to hear your thoughts in below. Be sure to leave them here. And that's it for this video. If you like this, be sure to subscribe, hit that like button. There's more content coming out where I'm going to be sharing hand of the days from the most interesting hands from the main event. So be sure to subscribe to this channel. More awesome content's coming. Thanks for your attention, your support, your love. I'll see you guys in the next one.